Hi, everybody. Welcome to the today's session of Tech Talk on recording designs best practices by our engineer, Brian Fisher, our engineering maestro.
Okay, guys, I'll take over from here. So let's give another
Yeah,
minute or two.
yeah, please. We can.
All right, we got a few more people. I'll give another minute and then we'll get going. All right. So I'm going to start off by thanking everybody for joining. This is going to be a tech talk on NX best practices. I do want everybody to know that this is being recorded. And this recorded session will be on our PROLIM channel later on. If you have not done so, please go into YouTube and subscribe to our PROLIM YouTube channel. Inside that particular channel there, you will see that we have a lot of information, including when I did my presentation last year at NX University. We have another Tech Talk here. We have several NX CAD videos, Solid Edge, CAM, Teamcenter, and so on. So if you've not done so, please go ahead and subscribe to that. And this particular Tech Talk will be posted there later. So with today's Tech Talk, we're going to do things a little bit different than what I've done in the past. For those that don't know me, my name is Brian Fisher. I am the Senior NX CAD Application Engineer here at PROLIM. I've been with PROLIM for a little over 5 years now. Prior to that, I was in designer in the aircraft industry for 15 plus years and 5 plus years in the medical industry. So on the agenda today, we are going to look at some file control, assembly load options, master model concept, assembly structure, and model changes. And when I say I'm going to treat this a little bit different, I'm going to try to get you guys involved more. I want to hear from you guys. I'm not going to ask for any trade secrets or any, proprietary information or anything like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to act as if like we're in a conference room and we're going to discuss what's worked for everybody and what hasn't worked for individuals. And I do have some demonstrations to do along the way also. So with that being said, first thing we're going to talk about is file control. First thing I want to ask, show me a raise of hands of who's in native. And okay, we got 1, 2, 3. We got 7 individuals out of 12. Okay. Anybody at 8? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and admit one other person here. So far it looks like we have about 8 individuals that are in native. For those that just joined, I'm just finding out who's in native and who's in Teamcenter. First one I asked was who's in native. Give me a raise of a hand. Okay, and that could be a mixture. If you use both NX and Teamcenter and native, that's a possibility also. So here we have 9 individuals. Okay, 10 individuals. So we have a good mixture of individuals that are in native. So we'll start off, we'll talk a little bit about native, and then we'll get into some Teamcenter also because we have a mix here. And it's not, it's pretty common for that. So if we're looking at this apart, my recommendation when you're doing a new file is to keep the design in the same folder. The only thing that I would not have in that folder is if I have a common part or hardware folder. So for example, I'll go ahead and bring up my folder here and show you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me bring it over. So here, let's imagine that this is on a shared drive out there. I have myself a working folder and an archive folder. And my recommendation for this is because you may have a lot of hardware and you don't want multiple copies of that laying around. So an example of what occurs sometimes is individuals will duplicate it and have different things such as bolts and screws, and it'll be named differently, but they're the same part. So my recommendation is if you're working in native, start yourself a hardware folder, have yourself an administrator there, and have that administrator lock that down. And then additionally, if you are starting a new rev, have an archive folder, drop your old issued folder in there or file. And then when you go to start your new rev, have a working folder. So in this case, you see I have myself a carry assembler rev 2. The next thing is rev control. That's very important. Always do a save as when starting a new revision. Like I just said a second ago, I recommend copying the file over to prior rolling it over and have an archive folder. And then naming standards, that will come into play also. I know every company has different naming standards. Some people call their revs Rev 1A2, 1B, A, and so on. So you have different, standards there. That's important because if you go and do, as I just showed here, a carrier assembly Rev 1, that's nice and dandy, that I have a folder named that. But as you can see, all my parts currently have no rev behind them. Where that becomes dangerous is if an individual goes in here, they don't know which rev they're working in if they just go in and work on this particular part. They could be opening CAD, which is a rev, 1 or 2, 3, they don't know. So the naming convention does come into play and is very important also. Then if we get into Teamcenter, we'll get into Teamcenter here in a few also after I show this. But if I go into my next portion of this, we'll get into load options. And I'm going to be opening some files and I'm closing some files and showing you guys some information on these load options. A lot of these load options they behave the same in both of them, and in other scenarios, they don't. So as I just stated, single folder for working except hardware and vendor. If anybody uses wave geometry, can we clear those hands that are up right now? Are we able to do that? All right. So if we could now, as I'm going to ask everybody, can everybody please clear their waves? Just hit your raise and it'll go away, I believe. All right. The next thing I'm going to ask everybody, who here uses wave geometry? All right. So we have a pretty good amount of individuals using wave geometry. And I'm going to ask, has anybody here ever used the bookmarks? All right, we got a few. All right. So for the next portion here, I am going to jump in NX real quick. And I'm going to go over some of these options that we have. So here I am in NX. And as you can tell here, if I go to my help and about, I am in the latest and greatest 2312.6. Now, for those that don't know, once every 6 months, we do have a new version that comes out. So we have 2 versions that comes out a year. They come out in June and in December. All right, with that being said, though, I'm going to be opening and closing a particular assembly. For anybody that's been in my training class, this assembly will look familiar to you guys. But I'm going to open and close it in different options and show some of the results here. So under my load options here, when I go to open it as default, it's going to say from folder, I got my scope. So you can do structure only, all components, and so on. And then I got my options here for minimum load. So right now, this is default. I'm just going to take it as a default right now, and I'm going to go open my assembly. So here I am in my carry assembly, Rev 2, and I'm going to go ahead and open the drawing. When I open this drawing, you're going to see I get this warning here. This warning is that it cannot go find that particular pin part. That's because that pin part is in another folder. So if I go ahead and open up my assembly navigator here, we can see that the pin is not loaded. So let's go ahead and close this, and I'll show how I can fix that. Within my load options here, I have from folder. I also have from searched folders. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this from search folders. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell it which folders to search. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and remove this because this is the default. It's looking back at my Siemens folder, my programs. I don't want that. What I do want to do is I want to come into here, open, go to my carry assembly, make sure it opens from there. And then I'm going to add another folder. And this particular folder is going to be called my hardware folder. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Now, if I come in here and I open up my particular part, you will notice that everything's opened. Now, if I come in here and open this in another window and take a quick look, we'll notice now the pin has a block around it. That tells me it's fully loaded. Why is that important? Well, it's important if we get into wave geometry. Currently, right now, I have minimum load. So if I came in and I made a change of this part, and I know this particular handle here because I created it, I know that it's had wave geometry to it. So watch what happens if it's not fully loaded. So right here, I have this particular part here, and I'm going to make that change. So let's unpack it, and let's go ahead and make it my work. And I'm going to go and change its hole size. And let's make it tiny so we can really see it. And you'll see that the handle did not update. Handle didn't update, but my hole did there. Now, this should have updated, but it won't because the handle is not fully loaded. So I'm going to go ahead and close everything again. And like I said, I'm going to be opening and close this a few times just to show some of these different options that we have in the load options. So under here in load options, yes, this all looks good, my search folder and all that. Oh, I forgot to go in and change my option here. If you notice and you hover over these, they give you information. Well, I'm going to go fully loaded lightweight display, or I could have went fully loaded. If you go fully loaded, though, and you have a huge assembly, it may take a little bit longer to open in that manner. That's why I often go fully loaded lightweight display. So I'm going to go in here and say OK to it. Go ahead and open my drawing again. And this time, you notice everything's fully loaded. So if I come in here in my assembly again, and I go to make that change on this part, if I've done it correctly and I have everything fully loaded this time, we will be able to just go in, make this change, and my wave geometry should update with it. So that's why my recommendation is to always have that fully loaded or fully loaded lightweight if you're working with wave geometry. Okay. So the next portion, I'm going to go ahead and close this one more time and look at some stuff here. When I go to open this again, right now this is coming up because there's a new material version that's just going to update my material that I have in there. And we go in and we look at my load options right here. Now we have it as lightweight. We have everything as we want. But let's say somebody is following me and I get out of this particular file and they want to have the same load options and they want to make sure everything's loading, all the hardware and everything. We have two options here. First one is we can go in there and actually save this particular definition file out to our carrier assembly. If I do that, what that allows me to do, if somebody comes in behind me, they actually have a folder and then they have the load options within that folder. So every time they know that they're pulling those same folders that we particularly just pulled. Another option is within NX, we have this file, we have save, and we have a bookmark. So within the bookmark, when I come to save this, it's going to go and ask me where I want to save it. Again, I'm going to come in there and go to my carrier assembly. I'm going to name this Rev2 or load option Rev2. And I'm going to go ahead and say, OK. I'm going to go ahead and close this again. And this time when I come in there to open it, I come in the file open. And if I take this down to all files, I'm going to get myself a .plm XML file. If I go ahead and I hit that, it's going to load all my options and everything and open my file up. So that's a great way to bookmark and have somebody just be able to go in there. Now, the other way, I can always come in here, assembly, and since I have it saved out there, I could say open file and load my definition file prior to opening up NX. So could you unmute everybody real quick? And I just want to discuss with everybody, see how everybody's opinion on this is and how it's worked for them. Can I get everybody unmuted, please? All right. Anybody want to discuss anything on this? Did anybody have any questions on what I've shown so far? Okay. All right. Well, if you have no questions on that, we're going to move on to the next area that I was talking about. So Teamcenter. So this is going to be for my Teamcenter individuals. So my suggestion in Teamcenter, if you're in Teamcenter, I suggest setting up roles and groups. So for example, not all users need full access. You may have a young detailer that doesn't need to write to the design file or anything like that. All they're doing is the drawings. I recommend having a drafting role and locking those particular assemblies down, and all they would have access to is to the drawing itself. My other recommendation is if a file is handed off to another user, have the file released to user lock, release for share, or roll it up to the next preliminary rev. So if you have Rev A and you're working a preliminary rev, it become A1. Once you're done with that A1, either user lock it or release it for share before you hand it off. Additionally, I recommend using checkmate before releasing any files. When I was a design manager, my role was to release a lot of the files and drawings also. So I'd come in behind my designers, I'd run the checkmate, and I would look at certain things. For example, within checkmate, there is a clearance check that you can run. If that clearance check was not run, I'd hand it back to the designer, unlock his particular file, and say, you need to fix this before you hand it off to me. Then they would take that particular file, hand it back to me. Once everything was good, I'd roll it to the next issuable rev. Now within Teamcenter, we have multiple different load options. So you have no working, latest status. One I used a lot, I would always use the latest by alpha revision order. What that does is if everybody's following suit, like I was just saying, where they go in and they release each one once they hand it off, you would then be opening up the latest rev, which would be the latest alpha. So alpha is A, B, C, D, and so on. Additionally, inside there, what we need to watch when we're in Teamcenter in the load option and revision controls. If you launch NX first from the portal, and what I mean by that, you got Teamcenter open, you go and you open it up, you can save the definition files out just like we did. However, if you load the assembly from Teamcenter, so in other words, in this case, the first scenario, you're in Teamcenter, you launch NX, and then you go and find the file. In the second scenario here, you just straight launch it from Teamcenter. So you go and find your file, you double click on it, opens up in NX. You may have different controls. You may have different load options. In that case, what happens is there's a preference override within the customer defaults and then Teamcenter. So this here overrides the load options of NX. Here's the other options you have. So if you don't want Teamcenter overriding those NX options, you may want to get with the Teamcenter team and have, you know, this particular rule set up where it is not overriding the Teamcenter, I mean NX. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Is everybody able to unmute and talk? Somebody give me a Jason, go ahead and talk for a second. I just want to make sure I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, just making sure you guys are just being quiet. So does that make sense to everybody, though, that works in Teamcenter?
Yes.
All right. All righty. So the next thing we're going to get into master model concept. How many individuals here use the master model concept or know what the master model concept is? Okay. All right. So we have one individual right now using the master model concept or understanding what the master model concept is. What the master model concept is your component file is your top, well, here, I'll show you here. You got separate files for parts and assemblies. So not all your files are in one assembly. So that what that means is you break it out to components. Your drawing actually has the assembly in it. Now, again, naming conventions are needed for this versus the mono file. If I jump back in NX here, and I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick and open up just the component itself. Well, my assembly itself. So here I am in my assembly. Within NX, you do have the option to always go over and say application drafting and starting your drawing. So at that time, that's what we call mono file or standalone file. If I come back out of here, though, the limitations on that is if I have this part open and everything's fully loaded, individuals underneath me maybe wanting to work on any of these particular parts won't be able to because I had that part checked out and I'm working in that particular part. So what master model concept allows me to do is if I come in and I say file and I go new, and this is going to be similar in both in Teamcenter and outside Teamcenter environment. This screen's going to look a little different in Teamcenter environment. I'm working out a native. But either way, you have yourself a list of drawings, and these are your template files. Inside there, I have the option to have standalone or reference existing part. When I say reference existing part, notice down here, part to create a drawing of. It's going to go in and it's going to pull that particular assembly. So it's going to reference that. So from here, I got my D size. I say, okay. And it's going to go in. And right now, it's going to go in and go into my native here. And out of the box, I would populate a title block, put whatever I want, and then come in and select my view that I want to lay out. Now, what's the advantage to this? Well, if I go and I pull these side by side real quick, and let's say I had an individual that was going into the drawing here. Inside the drawing, they're putting a parts list. They're putting maybe some basic views out there they want to put in there. Maybe they're going in and just putting notes and charts or populating a parts list, like I said. And then this individual's still working on here. So this is a huge assembly. I know this ain't a huge assembly, but imagine it's a huge assembly and we have multiple people working on these individual components. Somebody may be on an apt end and somebody may be on the other end, and they're working on it. And the other individual, you know, he's setting up all his sheets. And right here, by the way, I'm going to do something I don't know if a lot of you guys know about also, allow automatic work part change. What this allows me to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to start putting blends. So imagine, like I said, this individual's doing the drawing. This guy's coming in doing some changes. Comes in, he puts himself a blend here. Notice I'm not having to say make work part or anything. I'm able to just quickly go in there and make these changes just because I have this on. And I've changed this to entire assembly. So now all these changes are done. Individual's happy. This guy comes in behind them. They go in and they notice, you know, they have sheets that are out of date. They go in and update it. And now you have your blends in there. So that's the advantage to using the master model for this particular situation. Now, the another advantage would be is if you have any CAM files. That CAM file would be directly bringing in this particular part, assembly, or whatever you're trying to go and machine. And if I make the changes here, it will make changes in the CAM file also. So you don't have to have, that is if you're using CAM NX. So the advantage there is you don't have to do a lot of import export and maybe accidentally grab the wrong step file, DXF, or whatever you're looking for. Anybody running into a situation like that where they had to, import and export a lot of information back and forth and accidentally grab something that was not, the correct ref? I know I've done it myself in the past, and I've caught the particular error, but it does occur, and that's where this here could help you with that particular situation. So that's the master model concept. And as I said, though, you will need naming convention. The reason you need naming convention, if you notice when I went to create that particular part, right now it comes in as carrier assembly underscore DWG2. That DWG is driven from my customer defaults. So within my customer defaults, I can tell it to be whatever I want it to be as the extension at the end. Notice this DW2, and if I go back into here, you notice I had a DW1 also. So the DW1 was the original, and then it recognized that DW1 was there and said, oh, you want to save this now as a DW2 instead. Notice I did not save it yet, so it's not in here. But again, that's where the naming conventions come into play and rev control comes into play. So again, here's an example of how we set up that master model concept. Here's the customer default area. This is where you would be able to go in and change that name extension at the end. Notice right now it says draft and parts right here, it says DWG. If it was a CAM part setup, it would have setup underneath it and so on. Now let's talk about structure with an assembly and how it is important to have components fully constrained. This can assist on not having interference if a mate and component changes. So if I'm in an assembly and it needs multiple arrangements, I would also use a distance instead of touch. If a component is allowed to rotate, you do have screws, which is use a line lock. Use our line lock there. What that does, it shows it as being fully constrained because it locks it in that position. So it's only one constraint versus having to put a couple different constraints. So some people's, company standards are to have the whole assembly fully constrained. And often people would be like, well, I got screws. All I care about is they're lined and face to face. I don't care that they can rotate. Well, we've added that line lock for it, and I'll show an example of that here in a few. Then we have joints and couplers. Joints and couplers, they allow a degree of freedom. So often, like I just said, companies require components to be fully constrained. Well, with joints and couplers, they work hand in hand with each other. You can use them to show them as fully constrained, even though there is still some degree of freedom. Let me jump in here and we'll show a few examples of, I'm going to get out of this real quick. We'll open it up again, just the assembly. And notice it's recognizing my load option still now, and it's opened everything full. So my first part is put in here as a fixed component. You can see here, fixed component. I don't have any constraints currently on anything. That's dangerous because let's say somebody comes in and are working on this particular part here, my splat. I'm going to go open in another window. And I've seen this occur. Individuals are working in it. Somebody's told to move something in a component, in an assembly, and instead of going into the assembly and moving the component, they're in the component file themselves. They come into tools, they say move object. They come in here and they select it. And let's just make a very tiny move. Let's do it 10,000. Let's do that. Just say okay. So now they moved it, and now we're in the carrier assembly. Now, at this time, if we just look at this with our naked eye, we don't see that interference. If I zoom in, you can start seeing there's a gap on this side and interference on this side. That's very dangerous. Individuals, went in there and moved the component and didn't have it. I mean, they moved it inside the component file, but not inside the assembly. So that's a way that you can quickly get interferences or big gaps real quick. So if I said prior though, there is a clearance browser right here and a perform analysis. If I come in here, I can come in here and perform a clearance analysis. Now, you guys may or may not have this depending on your bundles that you're working out of. So when I'm in here, I simply went in and said perform analysis. It gives me this here, and I can quickly come in there and see what these particular interferences are. So sometimes you may have interferences you want for a press fit or something like that, or line to line, you know, such as what's going on with my screw here right now. And then we have our interference here. If we keep on going on, this interference is actually because the wave control geometry, when I had this particular part created, it brought the sheet with it for its model and reference set. What I should do is go to that model and reference set and just remove that sheet, and we would get rid of that one. Has anybody here ever used the clearance browser that I just showed? Or even seen it? One person. Okay. So that's the other recommendation I have, though. If you're using assemblies, do use that clearance analysis. So now let's talk about arrangements real quick with this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to constrain a few things. And this will be pretty quick. So I'm going to unpack. I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to move this component. Anybody that knows my that's been to my class knows that this changed because that handle is driven by this back face here. So here I'm going to go ahead and just do a couple constraints here. Concentric. Nice thing about the concentric constraint, it only, oh, I did that incorrectly. Let me do that again. Sorry, guys. Do the first one. I did not apply the first one. My bad. And then we go on to the second one. The concentric here is real nice because it only takes two particular constraints to go in and do that one. However, like I said, though, if we want to do arrangements, we don't want that scenario. We want to be able to, let's say this was on, for example, able to slide. I know it's not able to here, but imagine we have a design that was that way. I'm going to go ahead and say move component for a second. Again. Oh, do I have that locked down already? I do. I'm sorry, I already have this one locked down. Let me go ahead and remove those. This time I'm going to put a distance here. Where's my distance at? There it is. And let's just say, for example, 0.125. Now I have myself an area that I can use with arrangements. How many people here ever used arrangements? Yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we got a pretty good amount. All right, 9. Have you ever run into a situation where you wanted to move and you didn't have a constraint there that you should have had, for example, on this distance? Maybe you had a face-to-face and you had to have another constraint. Has that occurred to anybody? All right. So if you have yourself where it's motion at first, I mean, distance at first, you can quickly go in there and now make your arrangements, right? So under my assemblies, oh, give me 1 second. My eyes are playing tricks on me. Oh, where's that at? Arrangements. Let me go ahead and just type it in.
You hadn't done more.
Yeah, my eyes, I probably saw it and just missed it, huh? All right, so here I'm going to go in arrangements, say new arrangement, and I name my arrangement. And notice right now the default is 1 and this one is the second one. If I come in here now and I look under my assembly navigator, and we want to make a change to this, notice we have our Oh, where am I at? All right, I was going good until this, guys. Now I made myself arrangements. I could go in and edit my arrangements right here. So if I come in here and make this my second one or my first one, I can go in, copy it, delete it, rename it, properties and such. And if I'm in a new arrangement here and I select this, let's go in here and look at this splat for a second. Notice right here, I can arrangement specify or edit an arrangement. In this case, I'm going to say edit an arrangement, and I'm going to go and put this one at 0. And this one, I can go in there and say specified, I'm sorry, 0. And this one, I could make it at point. Whoops. And then if I go in and change that arrangement, they should move if I did this correctly. There you go. See how I closed the gap there? And if I came in here and did this, we'd have our new one arrangement. So that's my recommendation, though. If you're using arrangements and you got anything that needs to travel any type of distance, I would use the distance versus face-to-face. Any questions on any of that before we move on? Okay. The use a line lock. Has anybody used the use a line lock here? Show me hands of anybody that's ever used the align lock. Okay, we got a couple of you. All right, got 3 of you. So let me go ahead and move this. By the way, once you use an arrangement, you notice that you'll get these icons in a position that will tell you fully constrained arrangement specific. So my align lock, though, I'm going to go ahead and move my pin out of here. Move it out of the way so we can look at it. And let's just say, for whatever reason, let's say there was a locking device or something on this and need to be like, let's just say 25 degrees or something like that. And that's what we want it to be locked at. So you would first rotate the part to what you want to lock at. And then in a line lock, it's kind of like an invert. I could pick the center and center. Or what I'm also able to do is I like to use concentric a lot. So I'll go ahead and pick that edge. And then I'll pick this edge down here. And it will lock it right into place, and it will be fully constrained just with that one particular align lock. So the align lock locks it into that particular place. So if you have screws, nuts, bolts, or anything like that, one of your guys' requirements is to have everything fully constrained in your assembly. That's one way that you can get away with without having to do multiple constraints. If I didn't use that, I might have had to use, a line, maybe concentric, and then I might have to put an angle, to one of these faces. So, you have multiple different constraints that you'd have to put for something that can simply be resolved just by using that align lock. All right, before I move on to model changes, does anybody have any other questions on the stuff that we've gone over so far? Nobody? Nothing? Anybody got a suggestion of something that worked for them that I did not show that they particularly think was a better method? All right. Let's go ahead and start looking at model changes. So how many individuals have been working on, let's say, drawing or PMI, and all of a sudden they get disassociated dimension from a model change? Anybody run across that? Pretty common. All right. Looks like the whole group pretty much. Does anybody know why that occurs? Anybody want to answer that? Okay, so I'll go ahead and answer it then. So what occurs is often somebody will go in and make a change, and they won't use what's currently in the model tree. And in NX, when you create any face, it gets an ID. And if you go and make a certain change in certain manners, that ID is replaced with a new ID. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to open up a new part here. And I'm going to do something real simple. So I have my model here. I'm just going to go and create myself a block real quick. So we have ourselves a block. And let's say somebody came in and said, we want to change the distance of this. But before I do that, I'm going to put some PMI to it. So anybody that's not familiar with PMI, it's product manufacturing information. It's a pretty nice little tool to have. It helps you eliminate 2D drawings eventually once you get used to it. What I used to use it for, I used to go in and actually place my datums. And when I placed the datums, I'd then hand it off to my detailer and they knew exactly what the important faces were. But in this case, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to put a dimension just to show what happens if we change things in certain manners. So here I have my particular dimension that's in here, and this will work in the same manner for drafting. So this here dimension would work the same manner that it would in the drafting side. So if I went and put a dimension on the drawing side, it pulls from that face also. So now let's say I went in and the designer was told to make a change to that top face. And they said, okay, not a problem. I can do that. They come in, they say extrude. They come in and say face edges, and they just go and put their distance in there and just move on. Okay, I got the correct distance. I don't care. Throw it over the wall. That's the detailer's fault now, right? That's their problem. Let them take care of it. So you notice it gets disassociated. Now, if I came in and I used move from synchronous and I pick my face and say, okay, notice it goes with it. And the reason that is because it actually just moving that face. That's still not my recommended way of doing it though. My recommended way is to always use what's in the parts tree over here. Now, another manner that we can come in, I'm going to go and create a few little different things real quick, just to have ourselves a little bit of a history here. Oops, picked the wrong edge, my bad. Put a hole. Inside NX, we have feature replay. Anybody ever used that or seen it and used? Okay, a couple people. All right, we're getting more. So that's a nice way using feature replay to see what the individual did prior to you. So you come in, you do your feature replay. Now, yes, I know I got a very small part here, not a lot to it, but it's just for demonstration purposes. So we come in, we do feature replay. If we take it all the way back to the back, you can do play and tell it how many seconds in between each play. So if we said, 1 second between each play, we hit play, it's going to run through and shows it. Now, 1 second's not long, so you saw it went real quick. Let's go ahead and do something like 5 seconds. See how that works. And then it goes through and it shows you exactly what the individual did to create this. This can help you go in and look at your model tree and troubleshoot if you're trying to change something and something's not going correct. Additionally, you can go in and you can do individual steps just by hitting these next. So the feature replay there can really help you out in understanding what the individual did to go through to get some of these changes. So one thing that's very dangerous with the synchronous modeling that I showed. If an individual went in here and moved this face, say they were told to move it an inch. Later on, somebody came back and told them, hey, I want you to move this face again, but I want to go back a ½ inch. Instead of using the model tree, they come over and they hit move again, pick that same face, reverse the vector, and go 0.5. Now you got multiple move faces on top of each other. That can get very dangerous. So limit using those move faces in synchronous modeling as much as possible on something that has a model tree. Those synchronouses are really supposed to be utilized pretty much for any type of model that does not have history to it. Now you can mix and match just like I did, but my recommendation is limit that to any of the models that may have, no features. Any questions on any of that? All right. Checkmate. Yes, go ahead, Jason.
Is that history like last the whole entire part's lifespan or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and show you, for example. Let me go ahead and open up one of these parts. If I come in here and I look at info, part history, you'll see that this part was created back in 2008. And if I go to the model tree, you'll see our model tree has a lot of information still in there. With that being said, I did want to show something else in here before we get to the
On that question,
yes, Joe.
but a user can delete the entire history and make it a object only that then synchronous can be used. I don't suggest it, but
Correct.
NX
We
does
can
have that
unparameterize
ability.
everything and then
which
go
is
in there.
awful.
I have seen it where the model was pretty dirty, and let's say it was something that could be used, three commands and somebody had like 10 commands for no reason.
Yeah.
I've seen it, where we've been, hey, just go ahead and remove that and then either remodel it or go in, like you said, remove the parameters and, use synchronous for that. But then again, you run into a situation where I just showed where it comes us disassociated, in the drafting. But
Right.
that also, if you're using CAM, can mess up your CAM pass also, can mess up your CMM. So there's a lot of things if individuals are using the master model concept and they go in an incorrect way, you are creating a domino effect where those dominoes are falling and you're getting unassociativity everywhere.
Understood.
All right.
And I agreed with your earlier comment. We don't use synchronous technology unless we absolutely have to, and it's usually on imported files.
Correct. That's my normal way of doing it. But there are still some people that get, files that are real old and are dirty and they may want to, do that. That's up to them. I don't recommend it. I recommend always trying to use what's in the tree.
Right.
Okay. The other thing I recommend at all times is use the hold command. Why would I want to use the hold command? So here's an example here. I have a hole here, and then I had two holes that were used for extrude. If I came over and I'm just going to do drafting real quick and throw this in there. What you'll notice is inside here, we have ourselves a hole and thread call out. If I pick this hole, I have a lot of ability to do different things to it. If I try to pick these, notice it won't let me pick those. Within the hole command in the thread, there's a bunch of different options that I can do. I can come in there. In this case, it was just, a simple hole. So it was only diameter and depth. But if it was a threaded hole, I would have a lot more information that I could pull. Another reason is if you go in and you use a whole table. Inside the whole table, I pick my origin, I select my objects. Notice it will select these. Let me go ahead and move it. But it doesn't, again, I can't bring as much information, with it. So if you're going to use the hole, if you're going to create holes, I recommend using the hole command as much as possible. The other thing that's nice with this hole command, let me go back over here. And let me go ahead and bring in an assembly real quick and add a component. If I came in here and added, well, let me add another hole. I'm gonna mess this up a little bit and put this part component. Oh, let's see here. I'm gonna pattern that hole. Just to show you a good advantage we have here. All right. So let's say I wanted to bring in that pin that I brought in earlier, and I want to add this component. I come in, I'm going to constrain it, but I'm going to do what we call snap here. I'm going to snap it out here in no man's land. And we're just going to constrain it real quick. There's a nice little thing called pattern component. Now, these are only 2 holes, but what it does here, I can come in here and select this, and it recognizes that other pattern that I have. I could do circular reference or whatever. I select the pattern that I'm going to be using, and then I say, okay. And what it allows me to do, it will come in there and put that part in here and reference off that selected pattern. Let me reset that because that did not work properly. Let's select the component again. I select reference. Not for sure on that. There we go. So what you'll notice here is inside here, it puts how many pins there are. If that pattern changed on that part, let's go ahead and say 3. And it may be too far down, but we'll see. You'll notice that automatically updates how many pins there are. If I go in there and remove it again and say 2, it's going to automatically go in and update that, and my bill of materials will be correct. Did somebody, yeah, need to select the base start and geometry found. Thank you. Yeah, I caught that. Thanks for the info, though. And from there, that's a good way, to be able to keep up on your quantity and have the correct bill of material. Versus if I try to do it the other way and I put a component in here, and let's go ahead and add the component again. And we'll reverse it. You notice when I go to pattern this one, I cannot select that there is another pattern. So I can't utilize that in the same manner I did the other one. So my recommendation on that is to always use the hole command as much as possible. It's an advantage on the drafted side, and it's also an advantage if you're trying to add components. I'm going to show one last thing, and then we'll go open it up for questions. So Checkmate, this is a validation program. Anybody's ever run Checkmate? Okay. So I'll show a quick example of Checkmate here. So in assembly here, we have our nice little area here, the HD 3D tools. Inside here, we have Checkmate. Within Checkmate, down at the very bottom, we have an area for setup tests. Inside those tests, I can say current, all loaded parts, all parts in directory. Then from here, I have my tests. This is out of the box. You have a bunch of stuff that you can come in and go and select. For example, let's just say PMI. Or if we wanted to look at drafting up to date, I put it arrow down and go and select that. Maybe assemblies. Maybe we wanted to see if clearance was ran. From there, once I have all my tests, I'm going to go ahead and execute it. And at that time, let me go ahead and move this. Why is it light out so far? Let me try to get back into here. It's flied out real far and I'm not, there we go. Sorry about that. There we go. So at that time, when it runs that pass, the test, you will get a list of stuff here, and it will tell you if it's passed it or not. It's a nice tool that you can quickly go in and set up tests and make sure individuals have ran certain design criterias. You also even have a spelling test, spelling in there. There's all kinds of information. And I do recommend everyone using it. It is a very nice tool. I used it a lot when I was, like I said, when I was the one that's actually issuing the drawings and everything. So we got about 5 minutes left. I know I took up a lot of time. And we'll leave the floor open now for anybody that has any questions or anything.
I have one.
Yes, Joel.
Back on the whole create function,
Yes.
does NX default to remove sharp edges and it adds a small chamfer?
So inside your whole command, I'll go ahead and I'll bring it up. And let's see which hole, let's just do a, or you said threaded hole, is that what you said, Joel?
No, it just I think it's a simple hole, but it goes ahead and adds a very small countersink, as if you were just deburring the edge.
Okay, inside the whole command, there are all kinds of areas that, so if I come in, for example, I'm just going to do a thread hole just to show you. And here you have to look at stuff. At times they may be checked on and you not realize it. So for example, let's go ahead and reset my dialog. You got extended started, but in this case, I do not, here's your chamfer right here. See how that chamfer comes? These are turned off right now.
Yep.
So those might be turned on yours. Go ahead and turn them off. And if I turn them on right now, and I came back in here, for example, it will recognize what my old settings were, and it will have that on. Well, it didn't that time. Amazes me. I thought it would. Maybe because I didn't put a hole yet. But if I were to put a hole in there, it probably would recognize that. Let's make sure real quick. Just put another hole. Turn the chamfer on. So that's what you're talking about right there, right?
Yes.
So that's probably what's occurring is when you're in here, that start chamfer is left on, and you can turn that off just by selecting it. Now there may be other options within a customer default or a preference. I would have to go look. I'm sure there is within there. I would have, like I said, I would have to go and search for it though. But there are probably preferences, you know, that have that default as it being always off. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, we'll leave it open for a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, we can go in and, you know, look at things. Now, I do want to mention also, this is held, we are going to be doing Tech Talk once a month. For the CAD side of it, it will be the last Thursday of every month. The CAM side is the week before, and then we have one for Solid Edge and Teamcenter also. So keep a lookout for those also, guys, because there's a lot of information that we're going to be using for that. And like I said, we want to try to get this where it's an open discussion and where individuals are, you know, seeing the tools that they want to be seeing. So if you guys have any recommendations for future tech talks, please send them on to me, and I will review them. And even if it's on the Teamcenter side or the Solid Edge side, I can also forward it on to our team, the information that you send me. So anybody got any recommendations for the next tech talk? Nathan, I saw you unmuted for a second.
The only thing I was curious, could you go in? It's like a lot of us here at Crown, we use a lot of the old Sketcher stuff.
Uh-huh.
And we had a real struggle when we switched over to that, to the new Sketcher. Of
Okay.
just like processing through, actually like doing a sketch. Like if you're just making a part, putting extrudes in and stuff, we had a real struggle with like geometric constraints and we couldn't quite figure it out.
Okay, so what version are you currently in?
Let
I
me
know I
check.
came to your guys' facility about a year ago, I believe. And I did go over some of that. You may have some of my training material on that. If not, inside our YouTube channel, let me go ahead and bring that up real quick again. Inside our YouTube channel, right here is a search area. If I go NX Sketch, you'll see I had a webinar on the new Sketcher, 55-minute on video. So that goes pretty in depth on it. And then we have advanced topics and things like that. So if you are in the latest version of NXO, however, if you go to open up a file that's using the legacy sketch, it now puts you back in the legacy sketch on that sketch. You don't have to go and renew them.
I think we got our I think we got our legacy sketch turned off. We're supposed to be using the new sketcher, and it is a challenge.
Okay.
Realized live was interesting when I was talking to people last week.
All right.
Nathan, I can talk to you later about it if you want.
Yeah, that's fine. Or as I stated too, I would recommend to watch this video right here. I go pretty in depth on everything on that. Now there have been a few changes since I've done this because this was 2 years ago. So there has been some updates and some enhancements at it. But if you need, I can always, discuss that with you guys. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Comment for future topic would be best practices for handling very large assemblies.
So very large assemblies. That would be the load options here. And really the best option is depending on how big the assembly is if you know you're not using wave geometry, just have it on minimum load.
Sure.
And if it's a very large one, you could always do structure only and then go in there and look at, one individual subassembly or component at a time just by turning them on.
And that's what we do.
So yeah, those are, there's not a whole lot, of information we can give on that. We're kind of limited, on how to open those. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody chatted something here and I hit something wrong. Yes, there is a way to go in there and go in and turn on the old Sketcher tool and turn off the new Sketcher tool. That's actually shown within my my presentation also. So for those that don't know, there's a utilities early access feature. If I come in here and I type in Sketch, I have the ability to turn off and on the old solver to the new solver. But do realize you will have to get out and come back in, for that to take place, okay? All right. Well, it's 12:03. We've already gone over a little bit, so one last chance. Anybody got any questions or comments?
I have one question, Brian.
Yes.
Shall I ask? We will use this one wave geometry link in assembly, actually in master model concept. Like people will use for the LH and RH, like in assembly, wave geometry link. Can I know?
When would we use it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, this is about the wave geometry link in when we are doing the assembly, like modeling or in the modeling of LH part or the RH part.
So,
I mean to say,
an example of this being used would be, let's say you're mounting up to an engine hardware, and that engine hardware has a bolt pattern, and you want to always be, aligned with that bolt pattern. You could go in there, and take that face or those edges or whatever and drive your holes in your part. And that way, if that part changes in engine hardware, your hole pattern will change also. So that's a good example, when people utilize wave geometry. Another example here, as you saw, if I want this handle to be driven by the length of this part, I have the ability to do that if I go in and wave geometry link this part. As you saw when I moved that part, that handle grew with it earlier. That's because it's linked to that back face. So there's a lot of use for it, but what you got to watch though, like anything else, if you make something too intelligent, it could break links if individuals don't know how to use it properly.
Okay.
So unless you're trained in the wave geometry and really have to rely on somebody else's model, I use it sparingly. Does that make sense?
Oh. Yeah, exactly, right. Yes,
Okay.
actually, that is actually it's a good command to use in wave geometry linker and unigraphics. Actually, that's an advantage in using this one wave geometry linker. So that is what exactly I mean to know about this one, how exactly we use in the assembly conditions for the large components and all, larger assemblies and the product.
Okay.
So,
If you want to look into more waves, just shoot me, a message and I can get you more information on that. Anybody else have any questions? So
thank you.
yep, not a problem. And here's my information, by the way. If anybody needs to go in there and send me an email, go ahead and do it. I know not everybody on here is under our maintenance, but I'm willing to, give you links and some recommendations. Yes, David, do you have a question?
No, I just had a statement to using that wavelength geometry. Our organization, as you know, Brian, the wavelength is very useful when you're dealing with customer models. So a lot of times we aren't dealing with native NX files. We get a model from a customer and then we create we do 3D printing, so we have to modify that model to be able to print it, and then that is in NX, and that's part of a wavelength assembly. So then hopefully if the customer makes a change to their model, regardless of whatever file format it is, when we get that new revision, we can replace their old revision with the new revision, and then provided that they haven't broken their links in their system, the wavelength will actually update our NX information.
That's that process I showed you. Is that correct, Dave, when we did the customized training?
Yep, that is correct. And it works really good, provided that they don't break their connection. However, if they do, it isn't a big deal to replace their model. It's just that all of your NX information becomes unlinked and you just have to go through the tree and make everything happy again.
Yep. There has been one thing added, Dave, to the new sketcher on that. I don't want to get into it right now because we're already 8 minutes over, but shoot me an email and I will show you something on the new sketcher also. Okay, that you can actually take that old dumb solid and we can use a synchronous where we actually cut a section through it and it creates it into a sketch for you. So you can control from the sketch right then and there. So you don't have to go through some of that process that you guys done in the past. So
I would say that would be something really good for your next tech talk. And also, since a lot of folks seem to have some issue with the new sketch, I would say share any and all tricks that you have dealing with it.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else have anything? All right, let me get everybody's last opinion and then we'll be getting off here. So the way this webinar, well, Tech Talk worked, did you guys like this interface better than, me demoing, the first half hour better and then asking questions at the very end? Was it better that we were able to go in and actually communicate? Did everybody like that a little bit better? Okay. No raise of hands? Nobody? All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. Like I said, shoot me any messages or any concerns you guys have. And I'll see you guys next Tech Talk. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the week and have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.